pesky mute buttons back here.
Do you mind if I set this up next to you? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. As long as nobody touches my phone.
How's everybody doing this morning? Good?
Yes.
Good? Has it been a good Gen Con so far? On a scale from 1 to 10, how good has your Gen Con be? I'm going to count to 3. Everybody yell their numbers simultaneously so nobody understands anything, all right? 1, 2, 3.
11.
Ooh, I got
Perfect.
some 11s out there.
All right. So this is going to be our story about how we made this game. It's called The Contender. We funded it on Kickstarter. We immediately spent all the money we raised and more. This is that tale. It's called How to Lose $40,000 on Kickstarter. My name is Justin Robert Young. This is John Teasdale.
That's right. First off, show of hands, how many people in the room have either run a Kickstarter campaign or are planning to at some point in the future? Excellent. Wow, look at that, those hands light up. So, most of the information in this talk is stuff that we didn't see beforehand. Like you have, there's the common pitfalls, and we'll burn through the common pitfalls, but you've probably heard those ones already. This is more about how to take, if you're very successful, if you're successful beyond your wildest dreams, you get a whole new set of problems that nobody's written about online.
Yeah.
So, let's get started. Justin?
Yeah, I graduated from school. Spent a bunch of money to be a journalist. I went $33,000 in debt coming out of said school. I decided to join the lucrative money-making career of sketch comedy. I then, when that was all tapped out, that rich oil vein, I decided to move into another cash grab industry, podcasting. And then I joined a company called The Go Game. It actually made me money because it was corporate entertainment where we would fly around the country and the world putting on scavenger hunts for various different places and people.
And I'm John. I took the opposite route. I went to school in Canada, where I graduated. Graduated debt-free, and then went into the lucrative field of software engineering in the Bay Area, California. But realized that that wasn't for me. So I then met Justin in the middle at the Go Game, and that's where we became friends at this company, this corporate entertainment company. And while I was there, actually, I didn't like Justin at first.
No, I was a real asshole to him.
He was. Deservedly so. But I kickstarted my first game while I was there, and so this is where I made all of the original mistakes that you've heard of. So that game was called Stranger Danger. It raised about $10,000 on Kickstarter. Of that $10,000, Kickstarter takes its cut. Kickstarter takes its fees. The credit card merchant took its fees. Then the production costs took the rest of that chunk, and then shipping was another $500 or so. Taxes, can't forget about taxes. That was bringing us deep into the red, and then finally we met a very enthusiastic lawyer who encouraged us to trademark the game through their firm, which ended up costing $6,000. So after our $10,000 windfall, I netted negative $14,000. It was a really good idea. Really good thing that I had that software engineering degree to back it up.
That is the thing, though. Like, as you look at that, and I mean, we've all been there. You go on Kickstarter and you see $10,000, and you're like, damn, that's like a lot of money. Like, if $10,000 fell in my lap tomorrow, I'd be really, really happy. But I mean, the legal stuff was really stupid, but a lot of that other stuff is really easy to kind of forget if you've never been in this process before, you've never manufactured a card game before, and by definition, Kickstarter is like the place where first-time creators get into this. So this is like a very common example of something that happens.
Yeah, big time. And this is like, as we said, like this is like you just barely funded. So the goal we set was $10,000, barely funded. Look at all of these expenses that you didn't quite realize. Now, if that's what I managed to do with $10,000,
imagine what we could do together.
with our powers combined, the Contender, we launched the Contender 2 weeks before Donald Trump announced his candidacy. We caught, literally in 2015, we caught the biggest political wave of interest and enthusiasm, and the Kickstarter was running before anybody was sad. So, the Contender raised $142,000 on Kickstarter of our, again, I think it was a $10,000 goal. Wow. That was a lot.
It's a lot of money. There was a lot of, we were high-fiving each other. Man, we were so happy. And just in general, this kind of doesn't matter going forward, but the Contender is the game of presidential debate. You have real quotes from real presidents and presidential candidates that you go back and forth with your friends using topics, real-world topics, to go back and forth. It's a fun party game. I would recommend everybody buying it, especially considering the horror show you're about to see.
So, one important thing to note at this point is when we were planning this campaign, there's two numbers. You actually have two goals when you're running a Kickstarter campaign. There's the public goal, which is like the fun goal. You know, if you hit this number, this will happen. You make the game, you sell the game, and then you forget entirely about the game. Then you have a second number, which is the amount of money that you make where you start thinking, okay, this is a business now. Like, this is something that we're going to continue to invest time and money in. And that number should be a lot higher than the, like, one and done, one-off Kickstarter, like, goal. Now, depending on who you are, depending on, like, what you want out of Kickstarter, you can set your Kickstarter goal to be literally, you just shave by and break even. As you've seen previously, that's not a good idea because there's lots of costs that you don't that you won't be able to anticipate. Or the people who do Kickstarter for a living, they make sure to set their minimum thresholds so that if they just barely cross it, you'll still be able to pay yourself out. So our goal for, do we turn this into a company, like to the point where if we hit this number, we'll be able to order so many extra games that when we sell them out, we'll be able to both pay ourselves and do another complete print run. Our number for that was $150,000. So we got very, very close. And we got so close that we're like, screw it, we're going to do it anyway.
You squint, it's basically $150,000.
You round up, it's like,
and it's that kind of financial acumen that we took into this process.
All right, so how did we make this money? So this is a breakdown of where all the money came from. Of the $142,000, a very small percent of it actually came from
press. We got a fair amount. Like, there was if you go to our site, you can see a bunch of fancy logos of various different blogs and outlets that have covered us. It was actually about as ideal as I think we could have hoped. It got covered in a bunch of places, but ultimately, that's that thin little deli slice of the pie that press got us.
That's right. Our big one was social media. Justin, as a professional podcaster, like that, turns out that pays off big dividends
Look at
when
that.
you are promoting your first physical product. It's
Yes.
just having a core group of people who can kick off the virality of your campaign. And a lot of people like how to make money on Kickstarter. When we were reading these articles, you'd see like the Exploding Kittens people talk about how they ran their campaign and then completely gloss over the fact that Matthew Inman has been providing free content for a decade and has like a 2 million person following. And it's like, no, you could have done no work and just sent one email to that list.
Yeah, and it's to take nothing away from what you do past that, but it is something that you do need to acknowledge. And I will say, going forward, everybody who is here, if you are going to run a Kickstarter, mailing list. Mailing list. Anybody that you know, anybody who playtests your game, anybody that you talk to, put them on a mailing list. It doesn't, if you have 0 right now and you have 15 people on a mailing list tomorrow, you are better for it, because that is a huge part of just having an activation a group like that'll push things initially.
Big time. So if you think about like how much credit social media gets as a, you think like, wow, we got to have a Facebook page, we got to have the Twitter account. For direct mailing, that was 3 times what we were able to achieve on social media. Like the power of owning your audience in that mailing list, like being able to, like, you have their direct contacts, you have their email addresses. When you advertise on Twitter or Facebook, you are relinquishing control of your audience to that platform. Like, they decide who sees your tweets, they decide who sees your Facebook posts. Like, it's not something that you can rely on. And increasingly, you'll see like the bigger media companies starting to fall back on email, where they can control completely like when you see who sees what and what you see. So the rest of this giant chunk of the pie is Kickstarter. Kickstarter is the platform if you want to make a tabletop game. Like, that hasn't changed in the past 5 years since we've done this. Like, some people think about, Indiegogo, or think about, GoFundMe, but Kickstarter, people actually shop there for games. Like, many people in this room probably shop Kickstarter.
And that
like
is,
you'd shop Amazon.
And that is beyond all the disasters, beyond all the botched rollouts, beyond all the heartbreak, all the lost money. It is still such a tremendous resource for new and exciting games that everybody still goes there. It is a massive brand, and you really cannot take for granted what that platform can do for you. There's a reason why it is the gold standard for raising money for tabletop.
It's true. We actually had Kickstarter featured our product featured the Contender in one email. They sent out one email and it made us $11,000. And like, there's no way we could have. There's just no other way to duplicate that. They just know their platform.
Yeah.
They know their people. We'll have questions at the end. We'll have time for questions at the end. So yeah, that's how we made the money. We're gonna skip ahead now to how we spent that money.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets really interesting, because there's 2 big questions that once your campaign, I mean, technically you should be asking these before
You should really be asking these before
it starts.
You really should know all these questions that we were dealing with after we raised the money. Please, if you take nothing else from this talk, you cannot have enough of these questions answered before you hit launch. I cannot stress this enough.
It's true, but at the same time, we were successful beyond what we hoped. And when that happens, your plan has to change.
Yeah.
Like, you now all of a sudden, like the like rinky-dink like manufacturer that you were talking to ahead of time, like you gain more. You are able to save more money by going to a different company, which is able to scale better. With the Contender, the big question for number 1, where do we manufacture, was, do we we're making a game about American politics. Do we make this game in America? And then how many do we order? That becomes very closely tied to where you manufacture because of the economies of scale that come in. Like, especially in the US, ordering, 20,000 games is way cheaper per game, not overall, way cheaper per game than ordering 10,000. Like, it's almost half. Of course, going to China, it's a quarter at the same number. So that was really the distinction that you have to think. That we ended up deciding to manufacture in the US. Like, we were wearing rose-colored glasses on this. We were like, yeah, let's do it. It's an
Like
American
red, white,
game.
blue-colored glasses,
Red,
baby.
white, blue-colored glasses, exactly. And to make up for that, we knew that we'd have to order more in order to make this worth it, in order to make it so that when we got to that point where we wanted to do a reorder, that we would have had enough margin to cover, all of the new costs for the new order without having to go back to Kickstarter. So, this is what our Kickstarter graph looked like. Like, this is the 1 month that we were running our Kickstarter campaign. This is an unusual looking graph because it is straight the whole time. And this was one of the things that we looked at. Like, normally you see a giant spike in the first couple of days, and then there's a mid-campaign lull, and then it spikes up at the end because all the people getting FOMO at the end of the campaign are like trying to jump on ship. So when we were looking at like, what is the continued trajectory? How is this game going to continue to sell after the campaign ends? That was one of the things that we considered. We're like, this graph doesn't look like a Kickstarter graph. This looks like continuous growth.
And if we know one thing about growth, it's that it never, ever ends.
That's right. So,
To the moon!
Here were our business projections. This is the actual data that we used when we were making decisions. So we were like, okay, it's an election year. There's election day. We want to make as much money as we can by election day, because after election day, historically, nobody cares about politics anymore. Yet another prediction that was completely wrong. So, this is Kickstarter speed. Kickstarter speed is, if we order 20,000 units in America, we sell out within 3 months, if we assume we continue to sell at the same speed that Kickstarter goes at. Now, we knew that wasn't going to happen.
Come on, we're not ridiculous.
Yeah,
Stop it. We'd be
that
stupid.
would be absurd. But I will say, when I plugged that number into our spreadsheet, it looked very good.
It's a good looking number. That's a sexy number,
It's like,
folks.
wow, we would make $100,000 each.
Easy.
I mean, that's board game money right there. Highest paid board game designers in the country.
And we
That
would have rolled
isn't
to Gen
named
Con in a
Max
Zeppelin. It would have been awesome, man.
All right, so that's Kickstarter speed. Now that's a little too optimistic.
Come on.
So let's just assume, that we do like 30%.
Very reasonable.
Right? Like,
Come
that's
on.
70%.
Let's be conservative, right?
Conservative
Prudent
number.
financial geniuses. 30% of what we sold on
So
Kickstarter.
if we only can keep 30% of our momentum,
So small.
we would sell out by election day. And they were like, all right, so worst case scenario.
Absolute disaster.
Worst case scenario, break even. The break even mark. If we just keep 10% of our Kickstarter momentum, we'll break even by election day.
Always good to have a disaster plan, right?
Next year we'll go to Gen Con in the Zeppelin. Like, this year we'll cover all of our expenses. Next year, we'll go to Gen Con.
And now, by the way, this also, all these projections, and this is what we were making our decisions on, is what we spend to buy all these games. Because again, you have to make the decision at the point of purchase on exactly how many you're going to get. You are betting on these projections. These are not just what we think will happen, because you need the goods and you need to buy them at the price that makes sense for what you are selling it, retail or wholesale.
All right, so let's see what the line actually looked like. That's right, and this apparently is not unusual. Like, there is a certain magic that you can tap into while running a Kickstarter campaign that doesn't exist when you're just another company shilling your game. Like, if we had the foresight to talk to any existing game manufacturer, they would have said that optimistically you can hope for 4% of your Kickstarter momentum to travel forwards.
And that's like, you should break your arm patting yourself on the back if you are at 4%. Like, that is a good number.
So we were at 4%. We did it.
Hooray!
We got that good number, the best we could have hoped for. But now, of our $150,000 campaign, we have now spent $200,000. So, here we are. We're now $40,000 in debt. So how do we get out of it? How do we try to bring this back? And this is scary. This is like, oh golly, like the manufacturer's like holding half of our games hostage, which we were totally happy about, by the way.
Because we had nowhere to put them. Like, we have no clue on exactly what we're gonna do with all the physical games that we're not selling.
It's like 50 pallets worth of games. Like, had they not been holding them hostage, we would have been spending hundreds of dollars a month on storage fees somewhere. So, we're like, oh no, all right, we'll get you that money.
Soon, I swear, like, today's gonna be the day. The big order's coming in. I can feel it.
It's like, oh, well, here's $500. That's a good start, right? All right, so we realized, all right, we got to work again now. We got to start doing work. We decided to reach out to media outlets. We got written up in the Wall Street Journal. We got written up in a couple of other articles. But what we didn't realize was the lull that we were hoping for pre-campaign, which is usually filled up by political puff pieces, like our game would have been, was being entirely focused on the all of a sudden super interesting election, and nobody would return our phone calls.
Yeah, I mean, this is like something that we had really counted on, was that at a certain point, politics, even in a primary season and a general election, becomes like, okay, again, these are the same talking points. Everybody knows who these candidates are. And
so let's do a story about a guy who painted their horse.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this man has a riding lawnmower with a candidate's thing painted on it. Let's spend 5 minutes on the news talking to him. And so we're like, huh? Like, we're a ridiculous random puff piece that you can write about? No. As it turns out, there was a lot to talk about in 2016.
Yeah, we even took the games to the Iowa caucus. We went and dropped off a copy at all of the campaign headquarters during the 2016 election.
We made the news in Japan.
We made the news in Japan. We
don't sell to Japan, by the way.
We barely made the news in Des Moines, but we made the news in Japan. We made the news in
Des Moines. Made the news in New York. It was actually a really fruitful trip. It was really good. But again, it's all about conversions, and we didn't really get a lot.
And we spent probably about as much on the trip as we saw in increased sales. So while we were on the road, while we were being active on social media, while we were getting on the news, we definitely saw a spike in like daily volume, but we were also on the road, staying in hotels, spending a lot of spending all the money, and we remained exactly the same amount in debt, which, though we are not business-minded, we knew was not something that we could continue
But
doing.
we were richer in spirit.
The next thing that you try when you have no idea what to do,
When you're staring into the gaping void of $40,000 in debt as the existential crisis munches at your self-esteem,
is Facebook advertising. You're like, oh gosh, there's so many people on Facebook. Let's just throw a bunch of ads up there and see what comes out of it. So, like, I work in San Francisco. I've talked to a lot of digital marketers. I know a lot of digital marketers. We didn't want to hire one of them, but
they're really
expensive. But, I got some advice and was like, okay, I could do this. So we spent $1,000 on Facebook ads, and the result was now we are $41,000. Like, Facebook advertising is really hard, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, like to be totally honest, we talked to a bunch of digital marketers and to think about trying to bring them on. And at that point, once you pay and they come at a premium, you pay the people. Then they're like, "Cool, all right. So what's your budget?" And we're like, well, I mean, like, what's a modest budget? He's like, well, geez, and if you really, really, really want to kind of cheap out on this, then I mean, I guess you could go as low as like $10,000-$15,000. But that's really what it costs to, you have to basically spend a ton of money just to find out where the rich veins are, right? And then you have to spend more money trying to, find exactly what the right combination of, pictures and words, and then there's, a whole art to min-maxing exactly how much you're paying for ads, either on Facebook or Google.
And you're also competing against all of the professionals who know what they're doing for your ad spend too. So unless you're very, very good at this, don't do it. Don't think that you can just turn on Facebook ads and be like, oh great, we got 0 sales from Facebook.
But they got $1,000 worth of sales from us.
We found out their advertising is much better than ours.
Very good. I'd recommend getting into selling Facebook ads.
All right, so Facebook ads didn't work, so we did the next best thing, which is publicity stunts. We decided that instead of selling our game directly, the real smart thing to do was to make political sock puppets of the presidential candidates and then try to make viral YouTube videos that we could then include a link to our game at the end of them.
Real smart business stuff here, folks.
I actually, during this conversation, I was just like, I can't even do this one. But the rest of the team thought it was a great idea, and you know what? The puppets looked really great. So after this, now all of a sudden we are, oh wow, it actually worked a little bit.
It was. It got us $1,000. In your face, Zuckerberg.
And only took about 2 weeks of effort making and editing and cutting the video. We basically ran a whole other Kickstarter campaign worth of work for that $1,000.
A full day's worth of shoots, several days worth of production on the puppets and the sets. I don't even know if you can see them anymore.
All right, so we got written up in the Wall Street Journal.
That's a big paper, folks.
Big paper.
Business people read it.
Yeah, and it was
smart, moneyed interests.
And it was in the business section too.
It was.
It was a good article.
And it was all about talking about how smart our game was. About how cool and smart and rad we were. And it got us $1,000.
Again, media attention does not last. This was all over the course of 2 or 3 days, and then it just came back down to the kind of flat line. So if you're going to be relying on publications, you better be getting written up a lot. Like, people better be talking about you.
Also, don't.
A lot.
Don't rely on that. It's not, it's really hard to do. It's inconsistent. You can't control it. And it doesn't really bring you all that much money, to be totally honest with you. Like, it's a great ego stroke to, be able to send, post it on your Facebook page and have your mom say, like, cool. But other than that.
That also applies, by the way, to YouTube channels. Like, we were featured on a couple of YouTube channels with 1 million+ subs, and you see a slight uptick that day.
It's a little bit.
But then the next day, back down, back to normal.
Like, it's good if you can get it. Like, I'm not saying, like, don't go and, like, reach out to all these outlets. Don't try to get yourself covered. Just don't expect it to be an earner. Like, if it brings in money, cool, but don't expect it.
The next thing was Amazon ads. If you're selling on Amazon, it's basically a one-click to turn on Amazon ads. Amazon advertising was actually the easiest, like, in terms of time to achieve, to amount of money that you end up getting, was the easiest thing that we did. Like, if you're on Amazon, just turn on the ads. Like, they do end up paying off. And it's super duper easy to set up.
And that basically just prioritizes your, it'll advertise to very relevant search interests, and unlike Facebook and unlike getting organic press, this is a place where people literally have their credit cards, or I guess metaphorically they have them out because they're stored, but like, you are taking advantage of the fact that this is a moment where somebody is at the place they are looking to buy, and you are putting yourself right in front of there. So that actually makes sense, because you're much closer to the point of sale on Amazon.
So this is a little misleading. It looks like we only made $1,000. That was like at the time, like in this period where we were ramping up. Like, since then, like, Amazon ads have been probably our biggest, like, the biggest driver of new customers to our games. Definitely do those. We went to conventions. We went to Politicon. We went to a convention specifically for political people. We made about $1,000 there.
Yeah. Of course, we had to go to Los Angeles, and we had to spend money, but it was still, it was a good $1,000.
Yeah. We went to Gen Con.
Hey!
That's you! This is now our 4th or 5th year at Gen Con. We actually did pretty well at Gen Con. About the same as Politicon, but a lot of new and like new developers, new game developers come to Gen Con to lose money in order to gain recognition. So yeah, we ended up actually making money.
A big shout out for every year but this year, because this year we're lazy. We partnered with the Escape Room, which is awesome. They are fantastic people. I would very much encourage you to go do the escape rooms there, because they're a great mom and pop business. But we found, we partnered with them to just be on the outskirts of Gen Con. We didn't have a booth. We didn't have anything official. We were not, in the mix there with anybody. But we found an opportunity to kind of hustle our way to just pitch people while they were waiting to go into the escape room, and we sold, but we made it a profitable thing, which we didn't realize when we were like done. We're like, yeah, I guess we made $1,000, and everybody that we were talking to that are like Gen Con veterans are like, you made money?
It's like, how did you make money at Gen Con? Only Gen Con makes money at Gen Con.
Dry land is not a myth.
All right, and then, so after all of that, like, we kind of got into our heads that, like, we need to trick people into buying this game. We completely forgot that, like, lots of people wanted to buy it when it was on Kickstarter. Like, lots of people got really excited about it. All of the reviews on Amazon were really good, but you kind of get in this mindset where you're like, ooh, marketing, like, gotta come at you sideways, like, gotta whisper into your ear while you're sleeping, like, buy the Contender. when really you should be focusing your efforts on just, like, telling people that your game exists and to buy it. Like, we went on this side track through, like, creating trying to make viral videos. We went on a bunch of different sidetracks, but then we're like, you know what? We have several thousand people who've already bought this game, and for all feedback, like they like it. What if?
Now,
Surprise.
hold on.
This might sound crazy.
Instead of making puppets, instead of begging journalists and bloggers and YouTubers to cover you, instead of going around the country and trying to meet new people and sell the game, what if we made more content for the people that bought it?
What if we sold the game, sold new content, to the people who already like us? And that's really what brought us out of it. So now all of a sudden we're at $3,000 net over a year of effort. And you can see on this graph where this line is, this is where we had the idea to start selling mini expansions. So it wasn't like, the next day we were out of debt after the idea, but, we had the first idea actually came out of our first Gen Con.
It was.
We made a Gen Con exclusive mini expansion, and then we had extra ones, and we're like, well, we're not going to throw these away, even though it was exclusive. So we'll just see if anyone wants to buy them.
What if we sell these on the internet to our mailing list? And it was a Gen Con exclusive of TV and movie president quotes, because it's real presidents that are normally in the game. And so we just went and took television and movie president quotes. And so now you can mix them into the game. As it turns out, it sold out in like
2 days.
Yeah. And so we're like, oh.
What if we did this again?
Yeah, there's like a presidential election going on where there's a lot of really high-profile debates.
And you know what? People are saying some weird stuff.
Like, it would be really fun for people to mix in the things that literally just happened into their games, because that's the season to do it. And so not only did we start to do that for mini expansions, but then also when the actual debates happened, the Clinton-Trump debates in 2016, we did a pre-sale. We're like, hey, look, we're going to do a mini expansion for this debate. Before it would even happen, we would pre-sell the idea that, like, anything that's there, we're going to finalize those cards tonight. We will rush print them, and we will have them to you within 2 weeks. And so we did that for each and every one of those debates. It actually wound up, that's what brought us out of debt. Like, that was the sequence of events where we actually, for the first time, saw not a red number in our bank account.
Right, like people would buy the mini expansions, and then they'd buy another copy of the base game as a gift for their friend. Like, it was a way to keep driving people back to the store and have people come back. So we managed to get all the way out of debt. Our manufacturer released all of our games to us, and then Amazon storage fee kicked in, and now we're back in debt again. But that was, now this was now like 4 years ago, and so since then, like, we've figured out kind of where to store things. Don't store things in Amazon. Amazon is for selling things. Like, they don't want your stuff if it's just going to sit around and not be sold.
It's tempting, because they'll take everything that you have there, and they'll keep it free for a little bit, and then they'll be like, oh, by the way, the rent just went up. And it will keep going up unless you either remove the stuff from our warehouse or you sell it. And we wound up actually having to destroy a bunch of copies.
5,000. We recycled 5,000 copies of the game.
And the reason why we did that, instead of Amazon will sell your stuff at, like, if you tell them, please get rid of it.
Yeah, if you say, hey, destroy these, they'll be like, okay, whoop, Amazon wholesale. Now you're competing against Amazon. Like, if you're still trying to sell your game, like, a lot of people are like, why did you destroy them? Why didn't you give them away? Why didn't you sell them for cheap? And it's because, well, first of all, it's just as much work to sell your game as it is to give it away.
It's harder.
It's really hard to give your game away. Like, you have to, like, we tried to give a whole bunch to a bunch of school districts because it did well in schools. And like the amount of work that you have to do to send emails to find a person who's like, oh, maybe we want this, maybe we don't. Like I was like, man, I could have been like cold calling like game stores and trying to like sell these.
Yeah.
So it just didn't end up making
Like
sense.
if you're a teacher and you want to copy the game, literally just email us and we'll send you one. Easy. If you want to give 24 to an entire school district, virtually impossible to get to talk to the right people and have things be sent and then actually distributed to classrooms.
And that's 24, and we had 5,000.
Which is a lot of dozens.
That's many dozens. So we ended up like paying to have them be recycled because storing them would have been cost way too much to store them. And had we sold them, we would have then been, like say we sell them for like $3 each. Like we paid, because we were manufactured in America, $8 each. So if we sell 5,000 of them for $3 each, there's no reason why now we're not competing against someone selling our game for $10, making a $7 profit on the games that they bought. Like that happens a lot, and it is the default setting for if you just say, oh yeah, destroy these items, Amazon. You're not, they're getting rid of them for you, but they can choose how they do that. And if your stuff's still in good condition, they'll list it on Amazon wholesale for really cheap.
Yeah.
And then you're competing, you're pricing against a company that acquired your game for much less than you did.
And then they're undercutting you and
Yeah.
All right, we should probably blast through stuff so we can get to questions.
That's actually it.
Hey! Been a while since we've done the talk. All right, so yeah, we got about 10 minutes for questions, so we'll start right over here.
So if storing it at Amazon is too expensive, how do you store it?
You need to find a storage center, like a fulfillment center. Like there are lots of places that you can just buy warehouse space at, and then when you're running low on Amazon, you just have them send the next, like you're basically like restocking from your warehouse where you're paying like $200 a month to store everything. And then you just ship the new stuff into Amazon, which becomes like, this is the hot area. Like things are moving fast when they hit the Amazon shelf. So generally, Amazon doesn't start charging you until you've had unsold merchandise there for more than 6 months. So just twice a year or two to three times a year, you just end up sending more inventory to Amazon.
Yeah.
Did you try to sell it to big box retailers?
Sure. The buyers for those are, they get a lot of pitches. They get a lot of people that want to deal with them. And ultimately, if you can get in there, that's awesome. But that was not a nut that we were able to crack. We would still love to. So I don't know if you know anybody. Here, let's go in the back there.
So the question I wanted to ask earlier on the email.
Yeah.
Kickstarter. Was there any communication between you and Kickstarter ahead of time, or did they just go ahead and do that?
No, and in fact, they are fairly consistent that they don't want you to pitch them. Like they're a little like, you just kind of got to catch the wind. We were, I think, if not the number one, we were in the top 3 tabletop games in terms of momentum at the time. Obviously, we were themed for the moment. So that was just a thing that kind of came together. We did another Kickstarter after that, and we tried to hike up our skirt a little bit to tempt them, and nothing. That just didn't happen. So.
Just remember when you're using Kickstarter, like Kickstarter is a business too. They want to make money too. Like they will promote the campaigns that are already making money. Like if you fund very quickly and like you have momentum, Kickstarter will see that and they're like, all right, if we promote this campaign, people who see this campaign tend to back it. And when people back campaigns, Kickstarter gets money. So if you like that's why it's really, really important to have a really polished video, or really polished campaign, so that Kickstarter wants to put it in front of more people. And then the one email that I talked about, the one where we ended up getting $11,000 from, was just totally luck. Like it really was. They did a special on games that intersected with reality, and we're like, oh, great! Like we didn't even realize.
Yeah.
But if you do pay attention now, Kickstarter has started doing these sort of themes. So right now, I think a thing is running called Break Kickstarter, where if you pay attention to that, and if you kind of steer into those themes, like they announce those months ahead of time, and if you could figure out a way to make your campaign fit into that, then they'll promote your thing more.
Just two questions.
Yeah.
Firstly, could you talk about, in retrospect, whether it would have been very different if you went with a publisher, because you seem to have self-published.
Yeah.
And secondly, if you can talk about the other distribution channels and physical retail that you might have explored and what happened, apart from the big box.
Sure. You know, we're kind of DIY folks. We were new to the tabletop community in that this was our first game. We don't really have a history in it. You know, now we would probably think about reaching out to friends that we have made in the industry. But at the point that we first did it, all the tools were there, and getting with a publisher seemed difficult to impossible, and pitching the idea seemed difficult to impossible. We can just do everything ourselves. But now, I don't know, we would probably think about it if we had an idea for a game, but even then, at this point, I tend to believe it's better to just own all your stuff. But that's for me, you know, that's a decision we made. John, we definitely reached out to a bunch of brick and mortar places, and some stocked it.
Yeah, it's I mean it's a slog. Like we talked to a distributor here at Gen Con on the floor, and
We're very dismissive.
very dismissive. Like as I'm sure, like many of you who are thinking about like running games and making games and selling those games, like this is a place where like all of the people who could like bestow the board game money faucet onto you, but like I don't know, like they're really looking out for themselves, and like if you sign that deal with them and you know it's hard for them to make your game popular, if it's hard for them to sell your game, they're going to sell a game that's easier to sell, and now you're tied to this. Now you're basically tied to a lead weight that like you basically can't shake because you've signed this deal. So really think about any business arrangement that you go into. Like if you are able to be successful on your own, then people show up and they want to help you or get a piece of that because you're already proven that you know how to sell your game and that your game can sell.
There's no magic way that you just make a lot of money.
No.
And that is kind of true of business. We joked when we were going through all this that like this was our crash business collegiate course where all of a sudden we were learning all these things that I'm sure at some point if you go to business school you learn. But that was there. Something that we didn't get to real quick that again this is just right before you're thinking about a Kickstarter. 2 rules. Number 1, sell your game. Not anything around the game, not a fun little tchotchke that can go along with the game. If you are insistent that you need to sell some other merch alongside your game, for God's sakes, not clothing, not anything with sizes, not anything that you need to personalize for people. That is a ton of money, it's a ton of cost, it's a ton of uncertainty for you, and ultimately it's not selling your game. It's selling a t-shirt alongside of it that will make your life hell.
Yeah. When you think about stretch goals, think about ways that you make the game better. Like when you hit a stretch goal, you should make the game better for everyone, regardless of like if they backed at a level where they get the thing, make it better. With Contender, all of our stretch goals were more cards, like a nicer material on the box, like all of those things. Like it's very tempting to be like, let's add in like a plush doll or like a postcard or like some special video where now we read off the names of everyone who does a thing. You're not going to want to do that.
I mean, a video's a one-time thing. Just nothing with sizes. I swear to God, if I see any of you put out a Kickstarter with t-shirts, I'm gonna be very disappointed. Just know I'll be looking at my computer screen with a single tear rolling down my cheek, like the litter Indian guy. All right, I think we have time for one more question. All right, go quick. Maybe we can blast their view.
Just wanted to know, how big was your guys' team? Was it literally just the two of you, or did you have other
Two of us, and we had two awesome women who are a design firm that helped us through it, but we were basically a team of 4 throughout this.
How would it have been different if you had manufactured in China?
It would have been a lot cheaper.
Or we would have bought way more.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm sure we would have found our way to screw our way out of all that money. I have faith in past us. We would have wasted all that money one way or another. All right, quick.
So how did you price out your mini expansions? Like, how did you know how to do much content with like a certain price point?
$10.
Yeah, it was a $10 thing, and look, that was the biggest thing that we realized was that we were charging $10 for mini expansions that were anywhere between 15 and 20 cards, so that's a really high number per card, right? But what we didn't realize, and again, it was us not putting faith in ourselves, is that people wanted the timeliness. They wanted, like, if they could get those cards right now, they were willing to pay $10 plus shipping and handling,
Right.
which
So
was
yeah,
huge
you
for
could
us.
you could print on demand those, and like because that you're printing them on demand, and because the quantities are fairly small, and because you're getting them quick, like those 10 cards cost us like $2 to $3 per pack to print, and so that's why it made sense. Like it was either $10 or we weren't going to be able to do it.
Okay, so because we want to respect the people coming in here, we're going to clear out, but John and I will be right outside. We will literally answer any and all of your questions. Thank you guys so much for being here. Wait, about
Figure it out.
I got it. Figure it out.
Rule number 2 is just do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, go, go, go.